You know what I always get, because I've got such oily skin, everyone goes, you won't get wrinkles. Well, they're fucking lying, because they're coming.
Well, this is a bolero, so I think I look like a matador. I'm gonna
Okay.
go all down the village in a bit.
Welcome to Welsh Wednesdays with me, Kate Gill-Williams, and
Me, Kiri, Pritchard-McLean.
so every week we meet up, have a little sgwrs bach about a subject to do with Welsh history or just Welshness, and then at the end, trio I esbonio in Cymraeg, try and explain what we've learned. That's kind of my Billy Bullshit minute, I call it, where I just like fish for words and go, right, let's string something together. What we on? What we doing?
We're talking about Tywysog Cymru, the Prince of Wales. Prince of Wales is a very old title, and with a lot of history to it, and I think some slightly contentious history to it as well, which is what I wanted to talk about, because I love the controversy.
The only thing I know about the controversy around Prince Charles was when that bridge was being renamed. Is it the one that connects to Bristol?
Yeah, it goes on to the Severn Bridge, right?
I think so. Wasn't it going to be called the Prince Charles or the Prince of Wales or
Wales? I think, yeah. Maybe it was going to be called the Prince Charles, actually. Yeah.
Should probably fact check that one. But that's the contentious bit that I know about this title. So I'm basically waiting for you to enlighten me.
The role has evolved over the years, so it was sort of created. It's now given to the heir of the British throne, but originally it was created like that, by Edward I, because there had been historically princes of Wales when Wales was like more groups of tribes as well, but Edward I in 1307, and he's the guy who built all the castles as well, to sort of like subjugate the Welsh. He has a son who is English, but he's born in Carnarvon Castle on the 25th of April, and that's Edward II. So he becomes one of the first like proper English princes of Wales. It's not automatically hereditary. It has to be kind of created every time and then bestowed upon the heir to the throne, so it's not an automatic thing, which is just some weird like constitutional quirk, I think. For it is the 3 feathers, so that's on like the Wales rugby shirts and thing, and then Latin it says ich diem, which means I serve.
That symbol's quite a contentious one, because there's a few schools of thought about whether that actually is representative of Wales, probably because it has connotations of Edward I, possibly. So there was a tweet on Twitter, obviously, and it was someone had put up a picture and said, if you choose to wear the jersey with the 3 feathers, because they're on some sporting jerseys, I think they might be on rugby shirts.
Yeah,
if I remember rightly.
I've got like a 70s rugby shirt, and that's got it on. Like,
Ooh.
Hello. So like the old 70s one has it on.
Yeah, well, you're heading for a cancellation, Kiri, because it was all kicking off. I hate it when I reference Twitter world because it's such fucking bullshit. But this guy basically said, consider yourself not Welsh. Sounds like a song from Oliver. Consider yourself not Welsh. But everyone underneath was going, I choose to wear it, and it means rugby to me. And of course, symbols change. Some symbols change over time and can mean other things. But that's quite a Twitter storm for like a day.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? And I can see how people can see it as a symbol of, but I think just making anything absolutist like that and removing people's personal choice from it, like being like, if you wear this, you're endorsing like a thing I don't like, which stands for, forcing your ideas upon someone, and be like, what do you think you're doing now with your manic tweet? Like that sort of absolutism and that lack of nuance in the conversation is exactly what leads to King Edward building a load of castles. there's also connotations there that the idea that Wales serves the monarchy, who historically haven't treated Wales brilliantly, and have sort of, you know, seen Wales as unruly Celts that need to be brought in line. And to be fair, babes, we were.
But I think that the Celts, the Celtic kind of culture and history was here first. Like, if we want to get into like who came first and all that malarkey, because that's very grey areas. But what I kind of enjoy when I was looking at about the history of the role and the princes was actually how the landscape affected the battlegrounds. So I think Powys and that area kind of really struggled because of its like proximity to England, and it just wasn't easy to defend. But the north, there's just something quite mighty about the Gogs. They could really defend, and they had a stronghold because of the landscape and the mountains. They're just like, fuck that, I'm not getting round a with her. So that's kind of really interesting, in how the title held a bit firmer in the north, really.
Yeah, lots of the princes of Wales were from Gwynedd in particular, because it's the sort of perfect storm between having, if you don't know it, a very unwieldy landscape that's difficult to, you can't say it's got a coast, so it can attack around there, but you can't always get to it, and Anglesey is famously difficult to sail around as well, so you'd have to be very skilled to sort of sneak around. And then you've got these mountains and what is obviously now a national park, but huge expanses of pretty terrifying landscape. And then you're also quite close to England as well, quite close to the border. So yeah, I think there's a reason that the topography, is that the right word? Yeah, the landscape anyway of North Wales certainly plays into it being a seat of power historically for whoever was running stuff in Wales, which tended to be the king or the Prince of Wales. The first Prince of Wales who was Welsh was Owain Glyndŵr, and that was from 1400 to 1409, and that was sort of given to him in recognition of him bringing the tribes of Wales, because it's a tribal nation, as it is now, in the north and the south hate each other still, and no one cares about Powys.
Yeah.
So it was like his reward for basically bringing everybody in line was to be like, okay, and he was sort of, I think his heritage was, he was from an aristocratic Welsh English family anyway, so he was given the title of Prince of Wales, and then he sort of went to war with the English because I think it was that he thought that the king didn't we'll do an episode on him at some point, but I think the gist is he didn't think the king took his side enough in a fight with his neighbour, so it's real Jeremy Kyle stuff. And then he's like, right, fine, I'm at war with you then. And so yeah, he was the sort of last Welsh Prince of Wales, and there is a legend that a Prince of Wales will return to Carnarvon Castle, who will be a Welsh speaker as well. He's part of this sort of this mythology that a prince will come back and lead Wales forward.
Looking through the different princes of Wales throughout the history, as a learner, their names are some of the hardest things to get your mouth around, because they're all like Llywelyn ap Llywareth or Ioreth or something like that. It is, it's a struggle.
I love the ap thing. I think it's beautiful. And my surname Pritchard, which is a Welsh surname, is ap Richard, but it's just squished together. So that's where it comes from. Yeah.
Ap is literally son of, right?
Son of, yeah.
So is that quite a it's patriarch, obviously, but is there an equivalent of daughter of?
No,
I don't think there is.
No, and also I've noticed, when you get like juniors, that's quite an American thing of like so and so junior. It's never like Tracy Junior, is it? It's never like Sharon, or like it's never a Katie Junior. It's always like Charles, or like it's always a man who's like, this name has got to live on. And in fact, the King Edward I, who basically instated this title, his son was called Edward, but the royal family are always like that. They've got 6 names, and I think they just shake them up in a tombola and pick out of that. The Prince of Wales that we have now is Prince Charles. Sort of so funny, when I think of princes I think of panto, and when you see Charles now and he's like in his 70s or whatever, it's not thigh slapping panto stuff, is it? So he was his investiture, I think I'm not pronouncing it badly, them deciding that he was going to be prince, happened in Carnarvon Castle, and he was only 20 years old, so he's like a baby. July 1st 1969. There was huge crowds there, about 4,000 people. Not all of them giving it a thumbs up, as you imagine, like a symbol of the British monarchy, and a symbol of, it was sort of, when Edward did it, it was sort of there's quite a lot of discussion that there's a brilliant, I think he's a philosopher, maybe he's a political analyst, a great academic called Gill-Williams, who talks about the Prince of Wales being a sort of symbol of the subjugation of Wales. So the fact that you're like, oh, go to Carnarvon, they're very chill about that kind of stuff locally. The idea of having it there wasn't, people weren't thrilled, because it's always been a stronghold of pride in Wales and nationalism. So there was some kickback. So yeah, about 4,000 people there. Some of them were protesters. He quite famously gave his speech in Welsh, which he'd been learning in Aberystwyth when he went to university there, which I think was a sort of like quite a big move for him to do, quite a risky thing. And I think a lot of people appreciated at least the acknowledgement of the effort that the I'm going to speak the language of the country that I'm going to become a prince of. And he is the longest ever serving Prince of Wales.
Jesus, isn't he just like, so from age 20? Honestly, when I think of Charles, I just think that man is desperate for his man to croak it. He's just waiting to be king, isn't he? But who booked that venue? Like, who was the venue booker? Thought, do you know where? Carnarvon. That'll be a good place to. What a piss take! It's so cheeky. Like, yeah, we'll just really like stamp our authority. Come to your stronghold.
But it is tradition, since King Edward gave his the baby was born in Wales, and he was said, right, you will be Prince of Wales. So it's Carnarvon Castle is really symbolic in terms of this title. And when the next Prince of Wales, if and when it technically would go to William. If and when that happens, they would probably take him. Excuse me. This is how boring I find hereditary power.
Just having power and land and privilege for the sake of it just feels at odds with modern living now. It is mad, some of the traditions that we've kind of kept hold of, and like, it's just the way it is because that's how it's always been done. It's a weird concept. I don't think it fits in modern society anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it's a strange thing, and it's a really strange thing to have someone who is not from this country, doesn't live here, like, you wouldn't be able to be an MP, like, and have such a tenuous link to a place. Actually, you could probably be an MP based on the one that we've got on Ennis Môn, but you couldn't be an AM. No. And yet we've got this sort of probably the most famous figurehead. If people, if you said Prince Charles, Prince of Wales, people from different countries would be more aware of that than they would of, Owain Glyndŵr or anything like that. So yeah, I think it's unfortunate that something so famous that relates to the country is for a start was originated out of sort of like, haha, it's going to be a present that I give my son, like that the British monarchy have decided, because you wouldn't get, like, because princes of Scotland have always been Scottish, like, it has been a title that they've had, and then they don't have a Prince of Scotland, like, it's not a title that they just give to people in the family. So it just feels like this this really difficult chapter for Wales, which so often has been lumped in with England in particular. Well, I thought I wasn't a royalist, then I started watching The Crown with my partner, and then would know what was happening in every scene before it happened. And he was like, are you into the royals? I was like, no, I think it's just because my parents read the Daily Mail and like the Daily Express. I think by osmosis, I just know a lot about Nazis and the royal family and where those two things cross over.
It's very much a Venn diagram for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Crown, I didn't watch series 1 and 2, which isn't out of bitterness. I just didn't like link to that history. But I really enjoyed the 80s one. I thought it was great.
You should clarify why it wouldn't be out of bitterness, because people don't know you like I do.
Basically, I went to university with Claire Foy, and one day I was changing a shitty nappy in my living room and she was getting an Emmy. I couldn't handle it. No, I haven't watched it. I think I saw a couple of them, but I just felt like I don't have much interest in the royal family. That's why I don't retain any facts from school about like any of the shit that's gone down. I don't know, like the queens and all. I just no interest at all.
Yeah. Can I tell you a similar story that relates to your Claire Foy story?
Yeah, is it going to stay in?
My auntie Mary was in went to do like drama, I think, and she was like, oh, do you know what, I'm just gonna give up because my mate Jude's so good at this, like I'm just rubbish, and if I'm not as good as her, I'm never gonna make it. That friend was Dame Judi Dench. Who's in Welsh?
Yeah. Now I need trio.
Mae gen i views, achos dwi ddim yn cytuno efo y syniad o teulu brenhinol o gwbl. Achos dwi ddim isio dwi ddim isio pobl sy'n dod o teulu efo lawer o grym a arian a tir, you know, dim yn I can't think of the word for fair. What's the word for fair?
Ddim yn gwybod. Well, ddim yn wir might mean it's not. Ddim yn dar is it's not good, neu ddim yn wir it's not right.
Yeah. I was going to say wir. Dim yn wir. Dwi ddim yn licio y syniad o y swydd invented i gwneud y gwlad teimlo bach. Ti'n dallt? Yeah, so felly dwi ddim licio y syniad o twisog Gymru.
Don't like the idea of a royal family. Brenhinol, is that royal?
Yeah, Brenhinol, yeah.
Brenhinol. Never heard that one. Brenhinol, because it just seems unfair that a title, basically a privilege, just kind of gets continued, passed on, and it's a title it's born out of making Wales feel small.
Yeah.
I trio i siarad Cymraeg, dwi isio deud, dwi'n deall sut wyt ti'n teimlo amdan y title yn y institution. Mae'n strange achos dwi ddim yn siŵr os mae institution yn cael lle yn y amser modern.
Yeah.
Dwi'n gwybod, mae'n siomedig i feddwl mae'n pobl pwy sy'n eni yn y background efo llawer o privilege ac arian, and dwi ddim yn medru weld sut mae teulu brenhinol yn rhoi yn ôl i pawb.
Dwi'n meddwl y teulu brenhinol dim yn cael lle yn y dyfodol. Dwi'n meddwl pan o pryd y brenhines wedi marw, teulu brenhinol marw eto. Well,
Teddol.
arall. No, yeah, also I want to say, yeah.
Hefyd.
Hefyd. Felly, be ti isio gwneud wythnos nesa?
Wythnos nesa, dwi eisiau siarad amdan rownd a rownd.
I keep your way.